Let's talk first about the data evolution timeline. We're living in a time where data is growing at an incredible pace. Every single day, we're creating huge amounts of data globally. Think about all these online transactions, social media posts, machine sensors, and more. Companies want to tap into that data to gain insights quickly. They also need to keep it secure and well governed. And of course, they need to adapt to changes in data structure without taking everything offline. So as one can imagine, that's quite a bit to juggle nowadays. So for today's conversation, first we'll take a look at what makes Apache Iceberg special. Then I'll show you how DreamFactory can take that data source and instantly give you a set of REST endpoints for read and write capabilities. And lastly, we'll talk about security, performance, and some general best practices to make sure everything runs smoothly. So let's start by getting a basic understanding of Iceberg tables. So Apache Iceberg is a table format designed for really large data sets. Think of it as a way of organizing and tracking data that can grow to petabytes, so massive scale. But it's not just about size, it's about handling data in a flexible and reliable way. In Iceberg's design, you have different layers. There's the metadata layer that sits atop and tells you what's in your data set, basically a big directory of all the files. Underneath that are the manifest files that map what's changed over time. And at the bottom, you have the actual data files, which store the records themselves. So by separating these layers, Iceberg makes it easy to track changes, update schemas, and read data efficiently. So why do we care about Iceberg? First being ACID transactions. If you think back to the old days, or maybe you're still living in this time, when multiple users working on the same data at the same time caused a lot of headaches, like corrupted reads or half-finished writes. Iceberg is built to handle that scenario cleanly. Everyone can read and write without messing each other up. Now, we also have schema evolution with Iceberg. Let's say you need to add a new field to your data with some systems. That's quite a big headache. You might have to shut down everything, update schemas, and restart. With Iceberg, you can evolve your schema on the fly, add a column, rename a field. There's no downtime. And then there's also time travel capabilities. Iceberg lets you go back in time and query older versions of the data. So this is super handy for auditing what changed last week or for rolling back if something went wrong. And of course, there is a lot of performance advantages in governance. So Iceberg is going to also provide a structure that makes queries run faster and help keep data in good order for compliance and governance needs. In short, Iceberg is made for that modern data challenge, big, fast, changing, and always available. So from here, I'd like to just jump straight into a demonstration of the capabilities that DreamFactory has to offer while integrating with Iceberg tables. So as we jump to DreamFactory, I first want to show that my Iceberg tables are stored in an AWS S3 bucket presently, which can then be queried via Snowflake. DreamFactory is subsequently able to communicate with Snowflake and perform any capabilities native Snowflake can. Because of this, we are able to interact with Iceberg tables in a seamless manner. While I will be demonstrating this through Snowflake, it is worth noting that we just released a new Databricks connector, and we will be releasing a Dremio integration early Q1 2025. that will have the same read-write capabilities as our Snowflake integration does. So just to jump right in here, to start querying our Apache Iceberg tables, I'll go to API generation and connections, API types, and in this case, it's going to fall under the database category. We will create a new integration, and I will search for our Snowflake integration. And I will name this Iceberg webinar and give it the description as well. Now, our third and final step is establishing the connection to our Snowflake instance. So I'll drop in our account identifier, my username and password to authenticate, and then lastly, my role. And then my database is going to be, let me go ahead and check here. Looks like it's Nation Iceberg. And then lastly, my warehouse and my schema. As I hit save here, that API is automatically generated for me with the corresponding documentation in a standardized open API format, as well as instantly secured. So the only reason we're able to see and interact with this API is because I am authenticated as an administrator within the DreamFactory interface. We'll talk about security here shortly, but just know this API is already secure out of the box. As we scroll down here, we have the ability to interact with the schema and tables as well as stored procedures. We'll focus here on the table endpoints, try it out, and I will simply hit execute to return a list of all the tables. It looks like I provided an incorrect username or password. So let me go back here and update that information. Well, it would help if I had put the right information here. I had copied the account as the username. Luckily, we make that simple update. And if I come back to that Iceberg documentation, we should now be getting that table returned to us. Nothing like a live demo. And now we're getting a new error, but no worries. Live demos tend to be this way. So we'll jump here to a new connection. And as you can see, we get our Iceberg customer table and nation table, just as shown here in our query from Snowflake. More interestingly, we can go into these tables, so our read access, by going to table name, and we have additional fields. We can query related data, so we can actually join tables here. We can filter on that data set. Limit and offset for pagination is crucial when we are interacting with large data sets. I'll just go ahead and set a limit of 10 here. And then lastly, we can specify that table name, which is going to be customer underscore iceberg. We get our request URL with our query parameters, and we see our successful status code with our data coming back to us from Iceberg. That is great, but what's really interesting is our write capabilities as well. If I wanted to, say, add a new resource, I certainly can by coming to I will close this endpoint, And I will come to the post table name, try it out. I will add in that customer iceberg table name. And in my JSON request, I will add in the full resource. I'll add in a new customer key of 5. And I'll actually change this to 7 for an example. I will execute that. And we see there is no records in that request because the formatting is a little bit wonky here. So I'll instead take this and we'll take a look at the nation iceberg table. But first, just to show there's no funny business, I'll remove this limit, add in nation iceberg, and we see all of our nation keys and names. You'll notice there is not an Italy here. So I will come down and post to nation iceberg with the key 26 in Italy. Hit execute. We get our successful status code. And if I come back to nation iceberg and query that record again, we will see Italy was posted to my iceberg table. So in minutes, DreamFactory has generated a fully documented and secure REST API that is able to communicate with our iceberg tables. To further highlight some of the security capabilities, as previously mentioned, if I were to take this request URL and try to invoke it outside of the platform, I will use our handy DreamFactory API testing tool to make a request here. And I will get a 400 error saying there's no API key detected in that request. And that's by design. There is no concept of an open or public API within DreamFactory. All APIs are going to be secure through role-based access control and API key management. So coming back out to the platform, let's create that role and key. I will create a role against the Iceberg Snowflake API. I will name this Iceberg Webinar. And I will say this is a read-only connection. I'll set it to active. And our access overview is where we select what we can achieve within that API. So I will say they have access to all the tables in read-only format. At any point, I can come back in here and update these permissions to add write capabilities and so forth. We'll just leave it as read-only for now. Hit save. And lastly, we will jump to the API keys and say Iceberg Webinar key. Set it to active. And that role we just generated, Iceberg Webinar, is available to us. So I am linking those role-based permissions to my API key. So when I hit create, I now have an API key with read-only access to those Iceberg tables that I can copy, take outside of the platform. And what I am able to do here is add in my API key securely through the headers by passing X DreamFactory API key. And I will send that request. And as you can see, we're now getting a successful status code with all of our records returned to us from Iceberg. So this gives you, I hope, a good understanding of DreamFactory's capabilities and integration with Apache Iceberg. We additionally have capabilities for rate limiting these APIs. So at any point, you needed to further secure an endpoint or a service in this case, such as that Iceberg Snowflake API, I can set a rate limit here to maybe 100 requests per minute, hour, day, week, or month to ensure that there is no bad actors looking to extract data or just overrun our API usage. So let's talk a little bit more about performance and best practices. As we take a look at making sure things run smoothly as you scale up, as mentioned, rate limiting is going to be very popular. Suppose you have a service or data hungry client. You don't want them to overwhelm your system with DreamFactory. You can set limits on how many requests a key user or just overarching service can make. This prevents overloads and keeps things stable. You also can implement caching strategies. If you have queries that people run all the time, like a report or a top 10 list, you can enable caching through one of our many options, most popularly being Redis. That way, DreamFactory stores the result for a short time when the request comes in. In return, the saved result, cutting down response time and reducing the load on Iceberg. These simple settings can help your APIs remain fast and reliable, even under heavy use. So just to wrap up here, we've seen how Apache Iceberg can handle huge data sets with features like ACID transactions, schema evolution, and time travel. We've also seen how DreamFactory connect those tables and instantly give you secure, well-structured, RESTful APIs. When you combine these two tools, you can have complex data in a simpler, safer way. Again, it's worth noting that we were looking specifically at interacting with Iceberg tables today through Snowflake, but we can also achieve the same results with read and write capabilities through Databricks and our new integration with Dremio coming in Q1 2025. If you'd like to learn more, check out DreamFactory's documentation at docs.dreamfactory.com or learn more at our main site, www.dreamfactory.com. You can also contact us at info@dreamfactory.com to get started today and start integrating your Iceberg tables as RESTful APIs. And we're also available in the Snowflake Marketplace for free. You can install us on-prem via any Linux distribution, Docker, or Kubernetes. We'd love to continue the conversation. So if there's any questions, feel free to reach out about anything, and I'll open the floor if anybody has any questions here as well. I'm happy to help. If there are no questions, looks like we can cut early. Greatly appreciate everybody's time and look forward to hearing from you all and testing your implementations with Iceberg. Thank you all.